The spell has been broken. I can live life as normal again. I can play music as normal again. Beautiful shadows of the hillside. Evil shadows. No, peaceful shadows. The flutter of wings on the trees. The wings of bats. Seriously, dude, you're a buzzkill. Good evening, folks, and welcome to the Horror Corner. I'm your host, Sean Patrick Erschen, and this week we are doing another movie review. This is Dracula's Daughter. So the film was released back in 1936 by Universal Pictures as a direct sequel to the original Dracula from 1931, starring none other than Bela Lugosi. So you don't really hear people talk about this movie. Nobody really talks about it. And that's kind of sad, you know, because this is an excellent follow-up. It's a great movie. I really, really enjoy it. And I feel it's worthy to mention in the pantheon of Universal monsters, you know. This is definitely a worthy entry in the franchise. So with that being said, the film stars Gloria Holden in the role of Countess Maria Zaleska, Dracula's daughter, if you will. And she has a fantastic performance in the film, you know. She's just perfect for this role, you know. She's very seductive, very alluring, and very beautiful. And she's got that kind of pale skin, and you see in the dark black clothes all the time, you know. She has kind of a deep voice, but at the same time very sexy and very Dracula-ish, you know. Just perfect for the role. Absolutely perfect. And I love her. I love her in this movie. So the film begins literally right from the end of the original Dracula from 1931. We see Professor Van Helsing, and that is Edward Van Sloan, returning to the role. He's standing there with the stake in his hand right after he plunged it into the heart of Dracula, killing him. And then, of course, we see a quick shot of Dracula sitting there in the coffin, which is unfortunately not Bela Lugosi. And it's very noticeable, you know, it kind of sticks out like a sore thumb. I really wish Bela came back just for that quick little cameo, you know, but unfortunately he didn't, and the scene does kind of stick out. But other than that, this is a great sequel. And at that point, the cops come in and they see Van Helsing standing there. Actually, he's Von Helsing this time. Why they changed that, I have no idea. Doesn't even make any sense. But at any rate, so glad that Edward Van Sloan returned to the role, because that brings real credibility to this film as a sequel to the original 1931 classic. And he does a great job, and he's in the role quite a bit, you know. It's not just a cameo, you know, he's in the whole movie, really, for the most part. The film also stars Otto Kruger in the role of Dr. Jeffrey Garth. And it also stars Marguerite Churchill as Janet, basically like his secretary. Yeah, so he's like an esteemed psychiatrist, you know. And Professor Van Helsing actually seeks his help, you know, because obviously no one believes Van Helsing and what happened, because he was the only one standing there alive throughout the whole thing. There's other just dead bodies around. There's a dead guy with a stake through his heart, you know. And he's telling stories about vampires, you know. Yeah, they don't quite believe him. They just see him as a murderer, and he's getting ready to go on trial for murder, you know. And he's like, well, there is one man that would believe me and will help me, and that is Dr. Jeffrey Garth. And I guess that's one of Van Helsing's colleagues, you know. That's someone that he really respects, and someone that understands his beliefs, you know, and they're both heavily into science, you know. So he seeks the help of Dr. Jeffrey Garth. And Dr. Jeffrey Garth also happens to run into Countess Maria Zaleska, you know. They have a big meeting, and she meets with Janet, the secretary, and Dr. Garth, and they have like a nice little dinner get-together type of thing. And Dr. Garth starts telling the story about Van Helsing and what's going on with that, you know. And he also speaks of getting release, and the Countess really responds to that, you know, the idea of release, being released from the curse of vampirism. And that's another thing I love about this film. The Countess doesn't want to be a vampire. She's very reluctant about it. She doesn't want to be. She wants to be released of this curse of being a vampire, being Dracula's daughter, you know. And I really like that. You know, it gives her sympathetic, you know, quality to her, you know. And I like that. But still, when night comes, she has to go out and feed off the blood of victims, you know. In the streets, she goes out. She gets her cloak, you know, black cloak, and covers her face, and she just comes out in the darkness and the fog, you know, and lures young victims into her spell. And she uses her ring, actually, see it right here, to lure them in. That kind of hypnotizes people and puts them in a trance, you know. In the Dracula film, Dracula just used his eyes and, you know, as his power of seduction. He would just stare into women's eyes and, you know, command them to do his bidding. In this film, she uses the ring as her power to kind of lure him in. And then, of course, her own seductive powers, where she's, you know, very beautiful and has that great sexy voice, and, you know, she just lures them in when they see the ring. That's just kind of gets it started, and then, of course, she uses her own voice and powers to reel them in and take advantage of them and bite them on the neck, because the police find the victims with the bite marks on their neck, and they're, you know, they're baffled, you know, what the hell caused that, you know. And then, of course, Van Helsing tells them all about it. That's the mark of the vampire. But I don't know how this can be, because Dracula's dead. I killed him, you know. And, of course, nobody believes Van Helsing. But then Dr. Jeffrey Garth backs him up and is going to, you know, do whatever he can to help Van Helsing. In the meantime, we've got Countess Dracula running around picking off people one by one. And there's a great scene early on in the beginning when she first appears, you know, like this with the cloak and the thing over her face, you know. And she seduces the cops because Dracula's body is sitting in the prison cell, you know, waiting to be buried or whatever they're going to do with it, you know. Or, you know, test the body to see, you know, what he really is, you know. And she's like, I'm here to see the body of Dracula. I want to make sure he's dead, you know. And she says, perhaps there's something I can do to persuade you. And you're like, what you going to do? Is it like a sexual thing or what? And she's like, perhaps money. And he's like, no, I can't do that. Perhaps something more precious than money. Perhaps jewelry. Look at this precious stone. And then she seduces him with the ring, and he's like standing there stone-faced, you know. So she ends up getting the body of Dracula, and she thinks if she destroys the body of Dracula that the spell will be lifted, that she will be cured of vampirism, you know, that she will not be a vampire anymore, because the king of all vampires, Dracula, is dead and destroyed, you know. And yeah, when that turns out to not be the case, you know, she goes back on the hunt again, you know, and she's very depressed about it, you know. And that's another great thing about this film. You never see that side vampires too often, She's very depressed about it. She's very reluctant. You did see that a little bit in a film like Interview with the Vampire, but not until then, really, And I love it. I think that's really cool. That's one of the great things about Dracula's daughter. There is also a hint of lesbianism in one scene, that, later on we would see films like, from Hammer, The Vampire Lovers and Lust for a Vampire, and you see the Gene Rollins stuff like Requiem for a Vampire, Fascination, and stuff like Jess Franco with the Vampire Lesbos, None of that stuff would happen without this film, because there is a little smidgen of hints of lesbianism in there when at one point the Countess picks up a young girl, a very beautiful, attractive, young blonde girl, and at one point it looks like the girl is about to commit suicide and jump off the bridge. She's got some crazy stuff going on in her life. I don't know if she's like homeless or something. But Sandor, her servant, kind of reels her in. She's like, "No, don't do it. I can show you a place. I can take you to a place where there's warmth and food and money. My mistress is an artist, and she wants to do a painting. She wants you to model for her, and you will be paid for it." So that kind of reels her in. She's reluctant about it, but she does end up going, and then she meets with the Countess, and she's very, kind of drawn in by the Countess, because she's very seductive, she's very sexy, She's very alluring, she's got a great body, beautiful face, she kind of has that glow about her, even though she's kind of looks dead, with a crazy white pale complexion, but still there's something very alluring about her, and this young woman is catching on to that. She's seduced by the Countess, so she's about to model for the Countess, and is she does take off her blouse, and she's just wearing a little kind of tank top thing, and she's like, "I suppose I should take these down a bit," and she takes off the little straps of the, and she's sitting there holding her dress up, and you see her back, there's no bra on or anything. And she's like, "Why are you looking at me that way? Won't I do?" She's like, "Yes, you'll do nicely." And then she starts showing her the ring, It's like, "No, don't come any closer." I love that scene, it's great. But yeah, this is such a fantastic movie. I think it's great, and I think Gloria Holden's performance is just magnetic, and I love it. It's one of the best performances of a vampire in the history of movies, in my opinion. Right up there with Christopher Lee as Dracula, with Ingrid Pitt in the Hammer films, or with, of course, Bela Lugosi as Dracula, She's up there, as one of the best vampire performances. I love it, And the film's got a great cast of Universal legends like Gloria Holden, Otto Kruger, and of course Edward Van Sloan. Like I said, he brings great credibility to this film and makes it a true sequel to the original Dracula, and does justice to the film. And the film is very well directed by Lambert Hillyer. Yeah, the film just looks beautiful. It's got beautiful gothic settings, beautiful. We see she inhabits Dracula's castle. She lives up in Transylvania on the hill, and we see the beautiful gothic castle in the hills, You got fog everywhere. It's just awesome. I love it. Classic horror. It just screams classic horror to me. So guys, yes, I definitely highly recommend Dracula's Daughter. So that's it for my movie review. Thank you for joining me, Sean Patrick Erschen, in the Horror Corner. Tune in and stay scared.